All right, I'd like to call the August 18th, 2015 Plymouth Village Water and Sewer District meeting to order. And we have minutes,
Which are here.
which we saw.
Yeah.
Chris?
Make a motion that we approve the August 4 meeting minutes.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty, that's done.
Our public comment.
No public comment, so we're gonna skip new business and just go to signing manifest and payroll. That way we
Okay,
can
that's a really
do
great idea.
stuff. All right, so we need a motion first.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the manifest for
Payroll.
our payroll in front of us.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All righty. I guess I seconded that too.
Mm-hmm. I knew that.
Yeah.
Minutes will reflect.
This is payroll. All right, this is,
So with the construction project, we had
This is
to get a
construction?
separate account.
okay, so we won't do this because this
Yeah.
is later.
Well, no, it's a part of the manifest.
Oh, okay.
It's all part of the manifest. It's just a couple of the bills we paid through our checking account, and we have to reimburse the checking account with the construction account. It all has to go through this construction account, and all the justification for, right now, there are only a few, there are some Wright Pierce bills, a Dan Crane bill for
And this
review.
shouldn't say 900, it's probably 90, right?
Which? No, 900,000 for Kingsbury.
So what is all this?
What is all what?
This
Okay.
700?
I'm trying to
Yeah,
explain to
you were trying to explain.
Okay, so some of the monies already paid to Wright Pierce need to come out of the construction account, which is going to be reported to the RD so we can get reimbursed,
Okay.
right? So we hadn't had that set up yet, so we paid some out of our regular sewer checking account.
Oh, okay, so this is
Make sure all
actually,
of the paper trail is correct, and the water and sewer district regular operating funds will be reimbursed by this construction fund. We'll get-
right, because we took out the construction loan with,
Yeah, we'll get up to
Meredith.
speed.
excellent.
And then it'll all come out in the Kingsbury, we'll pay them. We couldn't put in a purchase order for 7 figures, just 6. So that's a PO in the amount of 900,000, and there'll probably be another PO before we finish.
Okay.
But the bill we're paying them is only 62,000
Right.
this time, for this.
Yeah, that's what I was
drawdown.
looking at. I'm like, we can't be possibly,
No,
but that's an
That's a
ongoing
blanket.
purchase
Yeah,
order.
that's a blanket.
Okay.
Yes.
Was having a small
Yeah.
heart attack.
No, so we don't do a purchase order every 2 weeks.
Like, seriously? We
Yeah.
can't possibly be doing that.
No.
Okay.
And there was a small
Uh-oh.
bill to Dan Crane,
Right.
and there was an advertising one, quite a while ago, so.
Okay, right.
We're just
That
trying to
was
keep
all
all our documentation in order.
Yeah, I'm trying to get this all back.
Yep,
Where did that
sign everything.
go? No. Oh, yeah, I think this goes with that.
No, construction, that one goes.
This is Dan Crean, so this is
Yeah,
separate.
that one goes with this stuff,
Oh,
and
first,
probably with this too.
no, one of them goes here.
Okay, this one. That.
Are we sure? That's what I'm looking for,
She'll,
the checks.
she'll put it back together again. It doesn't, this is above Mr. Banks.
294,
Yeah,
yeah,
this
this
is-
goes
this
with
is
this.
regular.
That
Yep.
goes with that.
Yep.
Hi, sorry to keep you
Hi.
waiting.
That goes with that.
We just did the minutes, and we're doing the manifest and that stuff so that you wouldn't miss
Well,
anything.
did the meeting minutes are fine.
Got your haircut?
I did.
Nice.
Thanks.
Summary.
Okay, Mary, at some point in time, all of this stuff needs your signature.
Thank you.
Okay, so we
No
can,
public today.
no public. Probably on vacation.
Could I have a pen?
You may.
Going on these. Hi,
Oh, it is cute. So, new business, release of lien.
Yep, here you go.
All right, we have A release of lien for 61 Main Street. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the release of lien for 61 Main Street.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Discussion of process and timing of plan review.
You ready to have that, or should we move that down on the agenda?
I can sign these at the end.
Okay.
Why don't we proceed and I'll deal with this.
Okay.
Pay attention. Wouldn't that be good?
So would you like to start this, or I can start
I'm
it, either
happy
one?
to. I'm
You
happy to
start.
it. I was approached by a developer and his contractor last week to sit down with them. I asked Jason to join me because I knew there'd be some technical questions. The contractor really led the discussion relative to what our process of review looks like and the timing of it vis-a-vis the state permit process and the town permitting process.
And for clarity for anyone who's watching, do we want to say what that process currently is?
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea, sure. Yes, and I
And
can't,
has been for
has been since.
how many years?
Probably since I was town administrator in the 90s.
Okay.
But I don't think that it's a written policy in
No, that's all right, but just so that
regulation.
for
It's
anyone
certainly
watching, if they're
a
interested.
long-standing practice,
Right.
certainly a long-standing practice. And as I started to think about it, and my memory is, it's old memory now, but I think that the then planning board was saying to the water and sewer district, hey, listen, could you not approve sewer and water connections until we get through the process? And I'm not exactly, I don't remember exactly why. I can only imagine that people were walking into the town hall and saying, hey, look, I already have water and sewer approval. So
Precisely.
why don't you give me, that's what I remember.
Precisely, that it becomes, that would make sense.
Why aren't you doing this for me?
Yeah.
We've already, and then the other factor from our point of view.
Goes the other way, too.
In other words, a subsidiary.
Right, it does go the other way.
It does, but in
exactly.
other words, a subsidiary entity to the planning process was giving tacit approval before the planning board did, and there were inferences perhaps being drawn from that.
I remember that.
Yeah.
And so I remember Rich Kent being involved in saying, like, couldn't we ask water and sewer to hold on
To
their
let the
process
planning
until-
board do their job.
Right.
Right.
So, from our point of view, from the water and sewer district point of view, we wouldn't want to walk down the road of reviewing something, first of all, unless we had all the payments made for the connection and payments made in advance for the engineering, and we had no risk in doing a pre-review. And let me just finish.
Mhm.
And secondly, that if the planning board made any changes, we'd need another bite to that apple.
Mhm.
Okay, so
So the process as it's been standing since the 90s is that someone who wished to undertake development would go for their preliminary planning process and be, as has been the case many times since then, where the planning board gives preliminary approval based on approval of subsidiary aspects like the state review and the water and sewer review.
right, those
And that's what's
permits
been in
have-
place for 25 years,
It's like
something like that,
you
20
get
years or
approval
something.
pending
Right.
water and
Right.
sewer approval, pending
Right.
state permits. So the developer and his contractor asked me if we could revisit.
And what was their thought?
Their thought was, in that business is rapid these days and sometimes timing becomes critical, and let me
I meant
just
more
finish.
in terms of mechanics, like when would they have, what was their
Okay.
suggestion
What-
of
what-
how the process would
Okay.
change?
What they were hoping for is to have a simultaneous review process, understanding that they would be on the hook for whatever the costs were, and that once the planning board reviewed it, if they made any changes, that we would come back and perhaps require something different based on the change. So I don't think they were trying to short circuit anything but the time it took to.
Do
to,
one review sequentially
Right, so that-
after another.
Right, and for this, for example, if somebody was going to build something that the occupant needed to be in by June 1st, they would want shovels in the ground very quickly, and if that didn't happen.
Right, they would have to plan their own planning process to take into account the further approvals required by the state and other entities such
That's-
as water and
Yes,
sewer.
that is certainly one way. I guess I try to take myself out of, try to be objective about it, and I remember really liking that idea from the town hall's point of view, like, yes, we don't want you to look at it until, so that people weren't trying to get away with the fast one, I guess, is one way to look at it.
Well, or perhaps it has the potential to create levels of pressure on the planning board
Mhm.
to follow through on approval because X number of dollars have already been spent, et cetera. I mean, I
yeah.
think there's
Yeah, that's
some,
sort of a
some stuff that goes on.
Right, and I mean, we have that, not to interrupt, but we have that same, Chris made a sound in my ear a few minutes ago saying, it works flip side also.
Yes.
People will come to us and say, well, we've got planning board of approval and we need shovels in the ground yesterday and why aren't you hurrying up? And
why
we
are
have
you-
heard
And
that
why are you holding?
many
Right,
times.
but that perhaps is something that could be addressed again at the planning review level. I mean, if you're planning to do a project, and if you want to know how the process works, and you want to do good production management, you would look at the fact that currently in the town that you're looking to do a project, the process is, I'm not making an argument one way or another, I'm just saying, you have a project you want to do.
Time
you
management
want,
skills.
It's production planning. You want your shovels in the ground on this date, and you know that there's about a month review process for the state and the water and sewer district after planning board approval, so you back your planning board approval up accordingly.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of, there are a lot of parties involved here, and you can't pinpoint which party it is that's putting the ultimate pressure on.
Right, so
And I mean, I can sympathize with a developer who's got a tenant or a
Perspective.
buyer that says, contingent on 90 days or whatever it is,
And that has happened,
right. So I mean,
And that is the case here.
I guess I just think we need to look very carefully at, it's not a matter of not being sympathetic to that, but really look at all the implications should we change our process, and look at all the implications of what that can mean for us.
Correct.
And because if it starts, this is a nice little district. We deliver really good water and sewer service.
Mhm.
We work really hard to keep the rate as low as it can be while also improving infrastructure and protecting the interests of our rate base, which are a subset of the entire community. And so the planning board is the whole community. It's community-wide zoning stuff. We're a subset of that, with particular responsibility to the people who support our work. And so I think we just have to be really careful to look at if we do this, what are the outcomes
Right.
in this scenario, that scenario, that scenario, and if it all looks like, well, in one instance, once in a while, we might be made to feel a little uncomfortable, fine, if that's a minority of it. But if there are a number of areas where our decision making could be construed to have conferred approval for a project that really has to be scrutinized on the broad standards of community-wide zoning articles, I just think we need to be careful about that. Do you see what I'm saying?
I certainly do. I certainly do, and
Can I ask a question? Because I actually don't know this, probably should, but I
I want to make one more
don't.
point in answer to
Yeah,
one of your
okay.
earlier questions. From the point of view of a developer or a contractor, and I tried to I've not been that, but I tried to, put a business hat on and think about the steps that it takes to get through any kind of permitting process like this, and the pressure I guess I'll say, in today's world, that things move fast and expectations get moved up, and is our thinking, and I'm trying to scrutinize ourselves, is our thinking archaic, that we have to do step one and step two?
Right, I don't mind looking at that,
Yeah.
but I think we also look at why we look at that.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Because, we are in a fast-paced world, and some of that has to do with technology, but some of that has to do with an extreme urgency on the part of business to maximize profit and find some profit with good reason. I mean, I believe in commerce, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But this region and the whole country just went through a significant, huge recession, and fortunes were lost, and fortunes were made by a few, but many people had to wait a long time to get a chance to do business again. I think there's an incredible sense of urgency that may be short-lived. Once businesses start getting a tack of, customers really are there, business really is there, I don't have to feel so desperate, you know what I mean? So to make sure we don't completely change process in response to a short-term sense of urgency occasioned by what one would hope we would not see again for a long time in this country, which was a huge recession. So having said that, my question is, when the planning board gives its conditional approval pending further approval processes, is it simultaneous what happens with the state and with us, or do we have to finish our piece before the state
No, the state
piece?
is
Because I know
first.
The state's
that's
comes
what I
first.
thought.
Yep.
So in fact, in a recent instance, we were able to help facilitate the state process while doing our own. I mean, I'm not sure how our process really is slowing anything down.
I don't think it is,
So
per se.
Okay.
But I'm gonna sort of probably shoot myself in the foot. I don't know. But we kind of just went through this. We didn't have our approvals in place to start a project that we needed to do as a district.
Right.
And
Oh,
here,
And that's because we didn't.
yes.
And frankly,
Yeah.
that's because somewhere along the line, and I'll own it.
yeah.
I never thought to say, have our approvals been
Well,
submitted?
it's not
and
up to us
Those
to worry
questions
about that.
were asked.
Well,
Yeah.
but I didn't ask them, so I mean.
You didn't.
Yeah,
you
but
didn't
we
have
weren't
to.
right.
You didn't have to. That's
You
why
know,
you have me and
then
Ted
that's what-
Ford and Jason.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make. I mean, I guess my point is that doesn't make. My response to that incident was not to think, well, if the process had been different,
No,
then
right.
we
Right.
wouldn't have had to respond
But-
to that.
I was sort of answering your question before of, we thought we had all of our ducks in a row. We thought we had plenty of time. And because of an error made by others, our project got pushed back.
But that's not what we've been asked to do. There's been no error. There's a sense of inconvenience on the part of somebody
Right, I'm just talking
in our
about.
process.
Right, no,
So what we need to look
I'm
at
not
is
worried-
how inconvenient is our process.
Yeah, and that's sort of not where I was going with this. Sorry, Chris.
Okay,
where I
then I'm
was-
going to listen.
Just
Where-
get the next 5 minutes.
Right, no, yeah, where I was going with this was, we know what it's like to have to follow a certain set of rules in a certain order in order to get projects done. We have seen that go very smoothly, and we have seen things where we've had hiccups because things have not worked out for whatever reason. Okay, we have had projects held up by RD because they didn't like the way something looked. I mean, when we did the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, I can't tell you how many times things came back on the table with something that needed to be. We got held up for almost 2 weeks because our
Yeah,
sign wasn't in
but-
place.
I know, but
No. But this was an entity
yeah.
because we were not following directions.
Mhm.
Okay? So, I mean, what I'm trying to say is everybody's got a method of doing things, and there's usually a series of steps you have to do to get there.
One distinction
we
I
feel
see
that-
is
okay.
that those are federal regulations or state regulations that we bumped into, shoreline at the, the solar array.
Oh, I
This-
wasn't I was talking
this
about the
is-
upgrade. That was something
Okay,
different.
But those are still federal regulations with USDA.
Right.
RD. This is a traditional policy that's not in our regulations.
Well, so the question is,
do-
first of all, look at the process, and then do we want to make it part of our regulations, or do we want to make some other process part of the
Right,
regulations?
Right.
So a question's been raised, and now we're talking about it.
Yeah.
It may take some time to answer it. Chris?
3 points, just 3.
He was writing notes.
Yes. Typically, and I haven't been here that long, seated that long, but the district takes on, for any kind of approval, both legal and engineering aspects.
Yes.
So, it's the planning board to interpret regulation, but we have a legal review, we have typically multiple entities, it would seem,
Mm-hmm.
that we have to deal with.
Yeah.
Legal entities, and then there's the interaction with the state. So, I'm not really sure exactly what is typical, but there's a fair amount. I mean, that just implies a lot more work than perhaps comes up in just a planning review. And also, it seems like in the last case, we had a back and forth with the state. So that implies that we can't be working concurrently.
We had a back and forth with the engineers designing the project.
Right.
And then the state approved it. in this
Right, but I
last
mean,
proposal.
there is information going around to
Mhm.
multiple parties.
Right.
Yep.
So, I mean, that suggests that, or perhaps we can kick that off earlier, but I'd just like to point out that it's,
Right, it might be
it's
interesting
not a
to see
linear
what our
process.
legal counsel think about changing the.
I asked her,
I have one
because-
one other thing I wanted to
Yeah,
bring up.
No,
Yeah.
you
And
had
that,
3
and that is
points.
that we haven't faced this recently, but there's the possibility that we would be dealing with more than one project in front of us
Sure.
at the same time.
sure,
And that would have some impact on, what we decide here.
yeah.
Right.
And that's
So-
very
so there,
likely.
we're going in, that Jason's time can only be sliced and diced so much, so that,
But they could be the same time later too. I mean, the demand might still be there a month after, at the
Mhm.
same level. I did ask Amy Manzelli, because I told her what the topic was for this new project, conversation with the developer and the contractor.
Mhm.
And to give her a heads up that it was coming, and that what the question was, and she said, simultaneous review is fine from my perspective.
In terms of being able to do legal review.
No.
In other words, simultaneous to the planning board.
Technical review, yeah, simultaneous to the planning board.
My question is whether it's, regardless of which legal counsel it were, it seems to me the question is, can the aspects of legal review that have to happen in relation to projects that undergo our process be carried out in a thorough manner during a simultaneous process? That's my question.
I will say that many projects previous to the one that's most recent have not had quite as much legal.
No, but the potential's there to need
Right.
contracts and understandings, yeah.
Right.
Well, I don't know what her workload is. I think she's able to respond to whatever her clients need whenever they need it, just,
I guess my question what I don't know is, the stuff that she needs to respond to, is the data gonna be there in a simultaneous review process? In other words, if the planning board still hasn't set the full parameters for the project and given approvals, is the data there for,
Good question, like
for
if
review?
they moved around or
Exactly.
something like that. Well, what I emphasized in the original discussion with the two is, if things change and we need to go back and revise, you're
You're
assuming the
right.
risk of the
No,
cost.
but I'd like to remove the individuals. The question is an interesting question.
No, I'm not talking about individuals, I'm
right.
talking
No, no,
about
no.
anybody that.
Right.
Anybody.
Sure.
What-
Right.
Because anybody has been at a planning board meeting where there's been a project and it's a preliminary, what do you think of this? Think of Boulder Point.
Well, no, that's different though. There's a design review phase, and then it goes into site plan review.
Right.
Right.
But if you remember Boulder Point,
Yes.
Boulder Point actually had to move buildings. Like they didn't
Right.
like the original design.
On paper.
On paper, right, they had to move buildings. So if we were simultaneously reviewing Boulder Point, and the planning board comes back and says, this building that you had here now needs to be here, everything that we reviewed
Has to be re-reviewed.
is gotta be re-reviewed. So in a way, it may be costing the developer more money.
Right, so do we have an obligation to think about whether we want to be doing that?
That's a good question.
That's a good question.
It is a very good question.
I don't know I don't think we should try to answer this question tonight. I think we should think of what are the questions.
Because
we really don't. Have we had significant difficulties with our process from any point that you can think of in the last? You've been sitting here 15 years.
yeah.
So think back. Has this been a huge impediment to?
When I was talking to Mel about this, the only thing I can remember is when June was the town planner, and we had a discussion at one point in time about the whole, why are we doing it in the method we're doing it?
Mhm.
Planning board first, water and sewer, and state. Usually water and sewer and state can be more simultaneous. And from my memory too, it was, the planning board had requested that nobody approve anything before they did.
And I can see that. I totally get that.
They were having, things dangling
Right.
over their head. Hey, the other entities in the town have approved something, so you need to approve this, rather than the planning board doing its job
I guess it would
first
be
and
interesting
approving.
to maybe see if we could revisit and find out, had there been instances where the planning board had difficulty doing its job because other approvals had been given?
That was sort
beforehand.
of what I had when Mel and I discussed this earlier. It was, let's get a history of how
Yeah.
this came about. And that's sort of where that email came from. It was like, where did this come from? Why are we, here's our memory.
And what's your
And what's your
take
call?
on it?
What's your take on it? This was a fact-finding email. How much do you know? How much do you want to change?
I read that email differently, so I'll
you
have to
did?
go back and reread it. Yes,
Oh.
I did.
Yeah, that
I-
was a, hey, here's a
I read it
heads
as
up.
what do you think of the idea of changing process?
Well, some
Email.
feedback on the proposal is what I asked for.
Right.
And to run it up the
I wish it
flag.
had come here first.
Well, that's,
That's between us, right?
Well, nothing's going to happen without
Right.
discussion. But for me, I wanted facts from the people who asked in the first place. What's your recognition? What do you remember
I don't
from
think
all
any
of
of
this?
them are still in town hall.
They might not be.
and
So I
don't-
think we
don't
need to go
they
back
carry
to-
the same point of view
No,
on it either.
but it isn't. But I'm not looking for point of view, just fact.
No, but I
Like,
mean-
what was the reason? Were there instances in which
And that's a
there
good
were
question.
difficulties?
I
And
don't.
so we can look at who the planning board member. Some
Well,
of them are still living,
Which
and
one?
It could have been that
Which
just
was it?
simply the past 6 years have been slow, and there hasn't been a lot before the planning board. But there was a time when there was a
when there was a
first-
lot,
a lot
and
before
that would
Yeah.
be.
the board.
And if
that
we're
would make
looking
sense
at
to
going
be.
into another period of time like that, which really, frankly, I hope for this community that there is going to be some growth and enthusiasm in commerce. I think it's a good thing. But it would be good to go back to a planning board that was functioning during a
Well,
busy
that was
commercial
more
time.
what that was all
Yeah.
about.
Okay,
you
I
know,
just read
and-
it a
I
little
did ask
differently. Yeah.
the planner to ask the chair, and she said she was going to send it to the chair and co-chair.
Right, but they won't
Did-
know that.
But
It's
if
fine to
in
send it to
their
them, but
pol-
that's not who
but
to ask,
It
right?
might be in their policy.
In their minutes.
No,
Or,
it's
or
not
in
in their, no, it's not in their policy. And
okay.
it's not in our policy either that I can find. It's not in our
Right.
regulations.
So it's a good idea to talk these things through, and maybe this is one of those things that should be.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
hard to,
it's-
it's
Our
hard to
process
say,
should be-
this is our policy when I can't point to where our policy
Yeah,
Well,
is.
at
and
some
you know,
point,
it's-
practice
it's
becomes
somewhere,
policy, and
and
then
it-
the question is, do you want to make your practice that has become policy part of a regulatory
And
understanding? And, that, in the end, that may be the answer, is to have
Well,
it be
we-
so clearly stated in the
Yep.
regulations that developers will know, oh, I really need to count back this many days
Right.
and make my plans accordingly.
The other
And-
thing I want to do that I haven't done yet is to check a few other communities that do have substantial.
Yeah, but I'd like to see what our community needs
Yeah.
first.
Okay.
I think we should look at what other towns are doing, and Amy might be able to help with that.
Well, I could just call the planners. and-
Yeah, you could, and ask them how they're doing it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and the other, the
Other
other
little
thing
towns
is
like Plymouth.
as
That's a good
long,
idea.
as long as I can remember, those forms that they have to come in and sign, it's there, it states right on those forms, you don't even bother signing this kind of thing until you have planning
Planning
board
board approval.
review.
Right.
So
It's on the form.
I believe somewhere in our regulations,
Probably a
there
vote
is
and
a
in the minutes,
sentence that
yeah.
says these
Not in
are,
the- It's not in the regs, but it may have been a vote at the board level.
Yep.
Which is buried in the minutes that I'm not researching.
so, but
Big project.
yes. And to answer your question from earlier, I don't recall any, I recall a little grumbling of, oh, why do I have to wait for planning board review? But once it was sort of explained that, it makes sense to make sure that planning board is putting you where you want to be and everything else before we start reviewing pipes in the ground, because if you
Right.
want to start putting pipes in the ground and your building has to be moved, then it's not really, doesn't really make sense.
Right,
And because our infrastructure is all,
right. And I can see how certain people might want to take a calculated risk that the planning board will not ask them to make any alterations to their plans. And that is a business, that's a individual prerogative of any business person thinking about investment and profitability is how much calculated risk do I want to expose myself to. Some people are very conservative, some people are very maverick, and then there's all kinds of people in between. But I think what we need to do is just not think about that so much as find out what really will work best during busy times of planning activity. What are other practices in other communities, and how does that work for them? There may be many communities where their simultaneous process works very well, and we'll be confident that it can work well, and that's all well. You know what I mean? I think we need to look at it in a very dispassionate way. And not try to answer the needs of either a conservative or a maverick business person,
Yeah.
but try and think what's the best thing, because I mean we're all fair. I mean I don't know you as well as Judy, but I know I'm fairly conservative. You're fairly conservative
well,
in
it
terms of
depends.
I want to know what I'm doing and not spend money.
Right, yeah,
I don't want to take a
definitely.
chance that this
Exactly,
$5,000 will
that I'm
be
gonna
spent,
put, right,
and that
I'm gonna have
and
to
that-
move my pipes in 2 months.
and that
yeah.
I'm going to have to spend $3,000 more to rework it, or I'm
Right.
making those numbers up.
Right,
Those
no,
are- could be
definitely.
$12, but I would tend to err on the side of caution with that. That doesn't mean it's the right way, but that's the way I tend to think.
Yeah,
but
I
it
tend
may
to
be
think in
that
a linear
people-
process.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But some people don't, and if there's I think we can be open in our minds to process changes if it doesn't mean that we will adversely affect our own ability to do excellent work for our rate base as a whole, as a subset of the larger community. And if all those things can be met, then
And, one thought
So-
is to have 2 different contracts. Post planning board approval, you sign these pieces of paper. Pre-planning board approval, you sign these pieces of paper.
certainly if you were going to do simultaneous review, it would probably be smart, and this will be, if we find towns
Yeah,
where they're
because it would
doing it,
have to be very different.
there's probably some memorandum of understanding that has to
Right,
be
exactly. The
signed
papers
saying
would
that
have
we
to be
understand that
very
this money that we are spending at this stage in the game may or may not contribute entirely to the end product approved by the
Right.
planning board.
Right.
But that's for lawyers to work out. and
Right,
I
but-
certainly am not somebody who can do that.
There is that idea that we don't have to necessarily cut off our nose to spite our face. We could say, we really prefer that you do a post-planning board approval for these reasons. However, if you decide that you want to take the risk and do the pre-planning board approval, here's what you've got to sign, and know that any changes, this
Sure,
is,
I mean,
it's
no
something to
offense,
think
but
about
it's
it.
billable time and.
Exactly, of
and
course.
it's cost.
This is true, because you don't necessarily know what, you've been approached by a developer who has an objective where he's saying that one of time to market is really important to him.
Yeah.
Others may come in and just not be well informed, so
Yeah.
that would help clarify
Right.
what the difference between those two paths are.
I think there is some value along the way to having our superintendent in touch with the design engineer. He's gonna pass on the regs, but there are questions the engineer might have that Jason would have the answer to.
Or maybe there's a different way to skin the fish in that case then. Maybe there's a way to structure a billable time component for consultancy that does not confer approval,
That's a great
In any way,
idea.
Yeah, I
but
was kind of
where an
thinking of that.
understanding of
Jason's
what,
time is
of
valuable.
how the infrastructure exists on the ground now, in the ground
That's-
now, not
that's-
on the ground, but in the
Yeah,
ground.
we hope it's in the ground.
In other words,
That's a great idea,
in
Mary.
other words, provide access to the deeper understanding that our superintendent has of the
And what our,
infrastructure and what the goals of the.
Mhm.
yeah, what our
um,
regulations are, things that they have to
Mhm.
follow. That's
Right.
a
I mean,
great
I mean,
idea.
The
That way, you
engineers-
don't really have to change your process. You can just open up.
A consulting ahead of time.
And with again, we would really have to think about what does that mean. I mean,
With a billable.
we would.
Mhm.
Well, in other words, we're not for sale.
Right.
And you don't get to come in and pound your fist and say, well,
I need,
damn it, I
I
need
need the
this now. And,
superintendent right
because
now.
if we've got something going on, like a major project in the time of the superintendent, I mean, his
Right.
his time has to
Precisely.
come
His
through.
time is valuable.
But
Right,
it doesn't
has
mean
to
there
come-
isn't time. It doesn't mean that there wouldn't be time. I'm just saying I think we would need to think about what are the parameters of how that's offered, so
Right.
that you don't end
And
up with.
he may have to add something to it once they're completely finished with their plan.
Right, exactly.
It's
But
just-
if this is
right.
if, remember, you have to have this size sprinkler heads, this is what you need for pipes in the ground, oh, you're gonna do this is the size water meter, this is roughly how much the water meter costs. I mean, these are all things that don't take all that long to.
No, but I think we would again, there would be more forms and more
Oh,
memorandums
agreed,
of
but that's-
understanding, so that one could not be
But
sued
that's-
or disparaged for having provided information that didn't work out well for the developer.
Right, to do any of this, there'd have to be zero risk for the district.
Zero risk for the
And-
district.
And we're,
is where I'm at.
we're here to help everybody.
Yep.
That wants to do business or connect
So
in some
Or
proper
house
way.
or whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
what Mary just suggested,
I wrote it down.
no,
Yeah.
it's excellent because it doesn't necessarily change the approval process, and it might actually speed up the approval process from
Or at least
our
make
end.
it a little more
a
seamless.
little bit more seamless, because we've already been talking to the engineer has more information to put in their plans, gets to the planning board, makes whatever changes, then says okay, it comes to us. By that point in time, hopefully, we've had our
input.
foot in the ground already. It's, Jason for a quick review, our engineers, our attorneys, and then that speeds up the process without changing the approval.
So you're,
So
you're
when-
saying an engineering firm would not first come up with a design with at least an email or a call to the superintendent? I mean,
Not
I would-
necessarily.
Not necessarily.
They might want to have an hour or two of his time to really understand what
Right, and
design
this is how much
parameters
it
should
costs.
I
If
be
you're
looking
gonna
at.
come sit, you
Because,
make an appointment.
they
and-
can read all the regs they want, but it's wonderful to talk to a really
Yes,
smart,
sure it
informed
is.
person who is
Right.
going to be part
That's a
of your
great
process.
idea.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to contact other communities to find out about whether simultaneous review processes are happening,
Do they
I
do this
understand
kind
it
of
does
thing?
happen
would
in
you?
other places.
Right, I know. I bet it does. I bet
Yeah.
it does, and I bet it doesn't in some places.
Yeah.
But would you ask similarly whether or not developers or builders of any type, anybody who's getting involved in the permitting process for water service in the community, whether they have access to the expertise and the time of the superintendent outside the parameters of the approval
Strict
process?
approval, right.
And find out if that's being done anywhere. I mean,
Mhm.
it's hard to believe I've come up with an idea that isn't being done somewhere.
Yeah, I could tell you what's going on in Littleton, but they don't have site plan review.
Right,
Oops.
I know, I mean, I would know, but they don't do it.
right. But Plymouth does, so we need
Yeah.
to find communities that
Yeah,
have
no, I
similar
understand.
kinds
Right.
of,
Yeah. No, that's
I
a
mean,
great
every town
idea
has its
because it
own
gives
zoning
more
regulations, but
information.
some are, conduct their
Yet
business.
it keeps the
Okay.
approval
Around it.
process
Does that
in
make sense?
line.
All right, so do you want to make any motions around this, or just give me general guidance to get more information and
Yeah,
you'll
then
table it
Yeah.
we'll
and
table
revisit?
it for
Table
sure.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
But I really like Mary's
I like the
idea.
consultancy. 'cause
I
that's
love
a
that.
but, you know, we could do simultaneous consultancy and then,
and just be really clear, like,
Yeah.
that way the planning board can
And it's
continue to do
separate
its
from
work,
the review process.
right.
and nothing we're doing
Right.
infers approval
Right.
that planning board will have to, or any other
Right,
entity
even
will have
ours.
to, right, that
Even
any
if-
other
right.
entity.
Right, because if we get the paperwork, and even if they did listen to Jason, maybe they didn't listen to Jason when it came down to the plans, and our engineer would have to look at it anyway.
That's
Well,
right,
well, no,
We're
they-
not gonna
they
be
would
putting it-
Be looking at it anyway.
Right, exactly.
right.
He would just, I
It
mean,
might be another
it
way to skin
seems
the fish, so.
that it would be of value to
good
that
way to skin
process to let him, I mean, it's a hard thing to consult and then, review for approval, you know.
Well,
'cause
that's because
And so
we
maybe we
don't.
don't, maybe it's not a good
Jason-
idea,
Partly
but,
your-
No, no, Jason is not our engineer. Jason
Right.
is our superintendent.
Right.
So those plans, even if Jason did consulting, those plans still have
Will
to
go
go
our
to
engineer. Oh,
our
for sure.
engineer.
and I'd
Yeah,
like to be clear,
absolutely.
when I say consulting, I don't mean that Jason would spend, I don't care if somebody wanted to pay $1,000 an hour for 100 hours. Jason would not be developing their plan.
No.
No,
Right.
not
He
at
would
all.
He would
No,
be
I know.
They have to
educating
come
them
with him.
about
Right,
the process.
If they have a
Exactly.
question, he can help me, yeah, no,
Right,
no,
okay.
I'm not talking.
Oh,
And
no, I want to
that's-
be really clear what I'm
that's
suggesting.
and that's
Okay.
why I
Yep.
said, you know, for Jason, he's really got no skin in the game because he's just answering their questions.
Skin he's
It's
got in the
still-
game is to have solid infrastructure
Yeah.
in the ground.
He-
Right,
For the
but
future.
what I'm saying
Yeah.
is it's not up to Jason. It's not up to any superintendent. It's up to our engineers
Right, I
to bless
understand.
it.
Yes, no,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, so what I'm saying is it didn't sort of make sense, sorry, Mel, for what you were saying earlier, because you were like, well, Jason's gonna have invested. Well, yeah,
Oh, well,
he's gonna invest answering questions, but it is not his final say. I
Right,
mean,
I
he still has to
understand.
talk to our engineers, and our engineers, if our engineers say no, then it's a no.
I understand, but I
Y-
mean,
yeah.
it's like if he calls for a grease trap, he's, you know, he.
Yeah, and he knows
But
enough,
that,
and
that's
our
what I'm
engineers
saying is
know
you don't
enough.
call for a
No, I
grease
understand.
trap, you talk about, this is when grease traps,
Yes.
this is why we use them, what their purpose are, you know,
Right.
something for you to keep in mind as you design such and such.
Right, you
know, I
need
think-
grease traps,
You
you're
know,
gonna
I think
need
Jason can handle,
sprinklers, you're gonna need, yeah,
providing information without advising.
Yes.
And that's really what consultancy
Yes.
is about,
Yes.
right?
Gotcha.
beautiful, I like it.
All right, so is this just a general discussion and I will take direction as I interpret it?
Right.
Yes,
To
Well,
be
let's
cons-
make a motion that we will ask our district administrator to contact some other communities that have similar kind of demographic and planning process
Yep.
to find out how they handle the review process, whether it's a simultaneous process or a linear process, and to let us know how that works for them. And while she's on the horn with them,
Do they have
to
access
ask
to the
whether they ever, whether in the pre-approval process, their, one or more of their employees is available on a consulting basis to people trying to get off the ground with their project.
Okay. That's it?
That's what
For
I
this
would like
motion?
to know before
Okay.
we talk about it again.
Okay.
Anything else?
Second, yes.
all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
I'm just gonna add one thing. Would you just check with Jason and see how much consulting he already does for them
Yes.
ahead of time?
I think I know, not that much.
Okay.
Because we had a discussion of that in this discussion that we're talking about, and he's pretty emphatic that most of the answers are in the regulations. And I don't think he, you know, I mean, he's been trying to honor, I'll review it once the planning board, so he hasn't.
Okay,
you
Yeah.
know.
okay,
Which I like that
Yeah.
he's been doing
No,
that, but
right.
if,
No,
but
we've
if someone's
all
taken
been
the,
doing
right.
that.
But you
Right.
know, it's, that's sort of like, the teacher we all had. I mean, every one of us, I'm sure, had a teacher who you asked a question and they said,
It's
It's
in
in
the
the book.
syllabus, right?
it's in the book. And it's like, well, you know I read the book and that's why I'm asking the question I didn't find. Can you just point me towards the page or something? And that's, I think a reasonable thing for Jason to be able to do.
Yeah.
But
I agree.
once we did start to review it, there were several backs and forth with
Mhm.
their engineer,
Right.
which we could maybe tighten the time frame up if we
By doing a
already
little
talked to them.
consultancy at the beginning, which is what Mary was suggesting.
Yeah.
I love
No,
it.
I like it.
I like it.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any
6:15.
more new business? Old business? Construction projects.
6:15. I don't have anything really exciting to report on the construction project. It's moving ahead now. We
Yes.
expect to be have the road open by the end of this week.
One lane, right?
And they
Not
needed
both.
the extra week of lane closure because of the approval glitch?
No, because
No.
pipes were not where they were supposed to be in the ground.
Okay, so we're really making sure we get those good as-built this time.
You know,
Well,
it's-
not only
it's
that, but I
really-
think-
It's really tight in there. The road is thin,
Yep.
and they
Like
they
the
had to cut into
guardrails,
the
yeah.
ditch in order to be able to get the trench box in
Yeah.
there, and they just ran into,
So it's not like something's wrong, that just
no, it was
needed
just
a little more time.
difficulty in getting the work done.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I would like to remind everybody,
Mhm.
for camera, since you're here this week, that Fairgrounds Road is closed. It is closed from approximately
Corner of Beach Hill.
the corner of Beach Hill, that's a good location, to the fairgrounds. That whole section down in the dip there is closed. There is no way to get through. There have been people who have driven through the construction site while construction is going on, which is dangerous to not only the people driving, but our construction workers who have had to stop the excavator mid-swing so as not to clobber a car. And we have also had people driving on the railroad right-of-way to try and circumvent the construction and then driving through people's yards to get back onto the road, which is also not
Rude.
the right thing to be doing.
Yeah.
So, just a point of order, the road should be open on the 24th, but if those road closed signs are still there and blinking on either end of Fairgrounds Road and the big orange road closed signs are still there, that means the road is closed.
Yeah.
So, please respect that. Okay, well, number 2. Oh,
All right, well, number two, let me take you down through this worksheet that I penciled out this afternoon. In the 2015 budget, we budgeted $40,000 to clean and inspect the 2 wells. We got the estimate from Barry Miller for $43,340, so it was a little over the budget, but we accepted it, to do both wells. They started out on well number 2 and have performed $7,900 worth of work to date, and they've stopped. Everything's out of the well. It's in extremely poor condition. They said even if they put it back together again, it probably would not function. So we have 1 well operating now. And the new estimate to put
well
new
number 2.
equipment back in with motors and pumps and all of it that it requires would take, so we haven't spent, what is it, 31,000. We've only spent 79 of the 40 we appropriated, but the new estimate is 54,530 just for well 2. And I can tell you what all that is. I think I sent it to you anyway yesterday.
mm-hmm.
Now there's no work performed on well 1 yet, so we still have, as part of that 43,000 estimate, 23,270 that is slated to be done on well 1. Jason told me tonight that that was rebuilt 5 years ago by Barry Miller, the
Mhm.
same contractor,
Yep.
and he does not anticipate the same type of problems, but we haven't gotten into well 1 yet. This is just identifying the problems with well 2. So there's 32,000 left in the budget. There-
Because we spent 8,
No, yeah, we've
basically.
only spent 8, right. And the surge valve replacement budget, we budgeted 50,000. I think we thought it was gonna cost more than it did. It was only 12,000. And that leaves 37 left. So those two sums together come to 69,100. What we need
It's
to
another
carry out this
basically
work.
Another
8.
8,000, yeah,
is another, yeah, the new total is 77,800.
right.
Let's get that consulting online.
Get the what?
Get that consulting online.
For revenues? Well, here's the other thing, in trying to identify, we do have in our expendable trust funds right now 28,410 for this
20 or
purpose.
30.
Let me tell you, right now in the fund is 28,000 in pump and motor repair. We voted this year to put 10 more in, so it's not in there yet, but there's 38,410 total. We're still moving the money from the banks and haven't socked that money in the fund yet, but it would
Yeah, but
be-
either way, we only need 8,000
Right.
ish, 9,000.
Yeah, so this is exactly the purpose, and in looking at the capital improvements program, Jason had identified that the total water pump and motor repair project would be 78,000, which was a little shy. And he identified that we put in 10 this year, 20, so he actually was thinking about this in our capital program, and we identified what the total project costs were estimated to be at least. And we were
Well, he was right on.
pretty well, right on, except, yeah, we've already spent 8, but, so this all just came up yesterday.
Yeah.
We got 2 memos from Barry Miller. One was, what are gonna be the additional costs to do new instead of repair and put back together again? And so that's why there's the difference, there's some very expensive items.
Right, there's a $10,000, $11,000 difference there between repairing and doing
Right.
new.
And as I told you, and
Yep.
we should tell everybody at home, these are 1951 wells.
Right.
And they have, they have about a 50-year life expectancy. So we've gotten 10 or 11 years, 12 years.
And would there have been any way, just for folks to know the answer to this question, myself included, would there have been any way to know this until you got in there and started doing it?
No,
Mm-mm.
no.
So
You gotta pull
pump
the
number 1 was
pump
pulled,
in.
what,
That's
5
what-
years ago,
that's
but
what I
pump number 2
thought.
was not then?
Yes.
Right.
Okay, okay.
So
We've
we,
kind of
so
been
we
trying to
budgeted
stagger
on
them.
a figure
Right.
that we
Right.
thought was somewhat likely to cover,
Well, we
The
budgeted
project.
on the clean and inspect.
right,
Not, oh God,
Not-
it needs a
and we were
repair.
hoping to do I don't.
the other stuff over
Yeah,
time.
I don't know.
Right.
Jason, a year ago, he wasn't even here yet.
I know.
So this was, he understood the work needed to be done when it was gonna happen. You don't know till you get in.
Right. But the truth is, putting it back together is a dumb idea.
Oh, you can't.
Yeah, it's
It
a
won't
dumb-
function.
It's a dumb idea now, yes,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
given its
So-
age, there's just, it
Yeah,
just doesn't
it-
make
Well, just if
sense.
anyone's following this, then,
Yeah.
you know.
yeah, no, right, I mean, this is complicated and
It's
it's
broken.
critical, it's broken and it's our
'Cause it's our well.
duplicate well.
Right.
It's our redundancy.
And-
So basically, what do you want us to do, Mel?
So-
What would solve the
So
problem?
so I think the first thing you would do is approve the 54,530 in addition to what you've already approved, which is, 23,270 is, you've already basically approved that
Yeah, but
Well, approve
for well
Yes.
1.
We'll approve the additional $11,000.
that's more than 11.
No, because that really goes between
No.
two.
It's the
Yeah,
54,530.
54 is the
54,530
new
is the
total, the new total is 77,800 between
So
well
we
1 and
need
well
to
2.
Right.
approve $37,800 because we already approved 40.
Right.
You need to approve 54,530 for well 2 and reapprove, if you will.
23,270.
23,270, because the new total is not 43,340, it's 70, it's an additional 77,800, and we've already spent 8,000.
Well, and also, what we would be approving is really not the same thing that we approved.
It's not.
It's a
That's
whole
correct.
new banana.
Right.
Okay.
It's
So I'll make a motion to approve the $54,530 expense to
replace.
replace
Well
the
number two.
well number 2
Right.
and make it brand spanking new like it was in 1951.
And then allocate the 23,270 to the well number 1.
Previously approved.
Right.
Yeah, good,
Right.
thank you.
So I'll
Sorry.
second yours and you can second mine.
And I was
that?
gonna say,
Second.
I'll second them because
Okay.
we had a
Okay.
dual motion there, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I should have asked if there was
Great.
any more discussion,
And
but I
then,
thought we
and then,
discussed.
you know, I haven't had I mean, I did this at 5 o'clock or 4:30 or
Right.
something. So we have budgeted, we have money left, we have 32.1 left in this original budget number. We have this money left over from another account, the surge valve budget, 37, which gets us 69. We could do this a couple of ways. We could expend the 38,410, or expend the current budget money and leave that as savings.
I like savings myself.
Okay.
Can we
I
take
was gonna
something
say,
from this?
I
Can
would
we take something from the
expend
Yeah, we
savings
can
to
take
make up the
something from the
difference?
savings, yes. And if you
I
If you
agree.
don't mind, I would like to have you authorize the expenditure, and then let's see where this really comes in.
Before we
Before we
hit
draw
the,
down.
Yeah,
Right.
and just remember too, that money needs to get moved
Right.
until I have access to it, really.
So we need
shall
to
make
just
a-
wait.
Yeah, shall we make a motion to
Revise.
use
motion.
the available funds
From this year's budget.
from this year's budget
And revisit.
and to find
Yeah.
the remaining money when we get closer
Yeah.
to needing to
Yeah.
pay for it?
Yeah. Because there also is, there could be another item where there's some savings in the budget, and we don't have to delve into the savings.
Mm.
That we don't know yet.
I don't know yet,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
Second.
yeah.
All right,
all those in favor?
Aye. One
All-
final question.
yep.
Are we getting an additional 50 years? Or 40 years, whatever?
Jeepers, I don't know what their guarantee is.
I mean, this is
I
a
would like to know
rebuild, or
that.
is this
That would-
essentially new?
This is a new pump, right?
Well, you know, materials today aren't like they were in 1951.
No, they certainly are not.
I dug
That's
out the
very
original
sad.
bid this afternoon, and I don't remember what
I mean, one would think that
their guarantee
in the,
is.
the rebuild process should essentially give us.
Yeah, I mean,
Years.
the quality of this work has to be very good because of the nature of
The
what it
beast.
is.
Right.
So, but I don't know what the
What the warranties on materials and
no,
things
I
are.
don't.
I think that's something we could find out about later.
Okay, thanks.
Well, just, yeah, right,
How would
and
that-
just
Yeah.
like what the anticipated lifespan of the,
Yep.
I mean,
Okay,
obviously
Put that under
Jason, I'm
old
sure
business
Jason is
next
thinking
time
of
around.
that because he's planning, that's gonna have to be one of
Yep.
those long-term planning things.
okay, and we have a letter from.
Actually, they
Do
didn't.
we need more?
No, they haven't. This is basically a new proposal. In the original proposal, there wasn't any kind of guarantee because they were just.
They were just
Yeah.
gonna
They were
repair
just
it,
cleaning
right.
and,
Right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a time extension request for 39 South Main Street's water line.
Yep, which is in front of you, and
Yeah.
I have a little more detail.
Okay,
Seems entirely reasonable.
can you give us more detail?
Yeah, actually, now here's a case where the applicant contacted District 3 engineers and said he needed to get into the road. Eventually, he did that after a little prodding from me because his 30 days was elapsing. And because they're not in compliance, the engineer over there said he would give them what do they call it, like an expedited
Emergency approval?
emergency approval,
Mhm.
expedite their approval process. So he gave them verbal approval to get in the road. And so I have the application, and so this process is being short-circuited because it's a quote-unquote emergency.
Okay.
to
Yeah.
get this
Well,
put
we
here.
dealt with an emergency a year ago. We know how much
Yes,
we
we did.
appreciate short.
Yeah, no, I think it's fine.
I would make a
We're
motion
seeking
to
compliance.
grant the extension.
Yes,
Okay.
second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Seems as though everybody's
Yeah.
working in good faith on it.
definitely.
So, I mean,
That's
So-
really real.
in general, what is this, because it's a state road, you have to,
Yes,
Yep.
have to get a permit.
okay.
And this is where a domestic water line was tied into the fire suppression system.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, just
Right.
reminding you.
So, I mean, these are the nuances of, going back to our earlier
Mhm,
conversation.
mhm.
There are emergencies and then there's planning.
Right.
Right.
Okay, other business.
I was gonna ask about the little message board, but I'm gonna kick that to the next meeting.
Oh, that's under investigation, yeah, please
Yeah.
don't expect to, we
No.
don't, no. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's on the list.
Good.
Yeah, Mel's asked around already. Good, all
Oh,
right.
to the
No, I've talked
staff?
to- Yeah, I've talked to the
Yeah,
staff
good.
about it.
No, that's all I was
Yeah,
wondering
that's
about.
all I did was talk to the
Cool.
staff, yeah.
Okay, purchase recs. We have 3, unless there's any more.
No, I don't have any, sorry, I'm trying to make notes from the
All
previous
right, make
discussion
notes.
that I
I'll
haven't.
do
No,
this while
no.
you're making
Yeah,
notes.
I've got it.
We have a purchase order in the amount of $900,000 payable to Kingsbury for the construction on Fairgrounds Road and on Tenny Mountain Highway. This is not what we owe them currently. This is just a purchase
Blanket
request.
purchase.
Right, okay, good. Answers my question.
Purchase order
Thank
in
you.
the amount of $1,200 to Gray Bar for tools and $1,200 for EJ Prescott for hydrant steamer. Okay, that's a new one on me. So could I
Yes.
have a second and then we can discuss?
Second.
Okay, what's a hydrant steamer?
It's to thaw a hydrant that's frozen in the wintertime.
Oh, well, that makes
Oh,
perfect
yes.
sense.
It's-
After
it's
last winter?
It's akin to a culvert steamer,
Yep,
which you can use to steam your lobsters if you know how to do it.
yeah.
You.
No, you get a big barrel and stick the hose in and steam the lobsters in no time.
Wild.
Green to red in no time.
Okie dokie. So, do we have a second? Do we have a,
Shall I make a motion that we?
I thought we motioned. Did we
Please.
second? I don't know
or-
what the heck's
I
going
know,
on
I'm getting-
anymore.
I'm not sure what you're looking for then, I thought we had two.
I guess,
Okay.
all those in favor?
Aye, Captain.
Who was the motion?
Mary, no, Chris, I seconded it.
Okay. All right, I wanted to
And
make
that threw
sure
us all off.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
throws
was
you
my
off.
fault,
wanted
because
to make sure
I
I made a note
seconded
about
it
the
so I
warranty,
could,
So I can ask about that.
Yes.
Because I'll forget. Now, I have non-public session in here, but I don't know that we have anything to discuss. That was a just in case. And I don't have any.
We haven't
land
heard back.
acquisition, no.
okay.
Rather than warranty, it's more like expected life, you
Oh,
know,
yeah, no, no,
lifespan.
yeah,
It's
I will.
just
I
so
just
it's
wrote that
clear.
down. So I'll-
No, what parts are warranted and, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there will be warranties on the pump, right?
Yeah, there's gotta be.
All right,
Yeah,
so then,
absolutely. But
not,
I just want to make a note to remember to ask, because I'll
Thank you.
forget.
and the next meeting is supposedly scheduled for the 1st of September. Does that interfere with anybody's anything?
I don't think so, but I'll
No,
double check
I'm
mine.
No, I
here.
think everybody already,
That
We
one.
already did that one, didn't we?
first, the 15th and the 29th.
And Mary, don't forget, you have a stack awaiting
I
your
know.
signatures.
But when I start doing that, I stop answering questions. And
Yep. Oh, I know.
Participating. So we're nixing the non-public?
Not if we don't have anything, we don't need it.
I don't have anything.
Anybody have anything?
No.
Nope.
Okay, then a motion to adjourn at
6:32.
6:32.
Not bad.
Yay,
Thank you.
thank you.